Hello there, welcome, come on in. It is time for another episode of Coffee and Crafting with the Cocky Crocheter. And as you may notice, I am dressed in my fanciest threads, and that is no coincidence. And that is because tomorrow is September 22nd. And if you're a huge Lord of the Rings fan or the Hobbit fan like I am, you may know that that is the shared birthday between Bilbo and Frodo Baggins, the two main protagonists in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. And so I decided, why not embrace that and celebrate by putting on my own little fancy silky waistcoat like the hobbits would, and celebrate as we work on a project together. So I also decided to work on this specific project for this because it incorporates some rune designs in it, which you'll get to see more close up here in a moment. This is just a cardigan that I'm designing, and I'm, just really excited to be able to work on it with you today. If you want to, let's get into the nice hobbit spirit of relaxation. Go ahead and grab a project, grab your favorite coffee beverage or whatever beverage or snack that you want to have, and let's get crafting together. All right, time to set up everything so it's nice and cozy for our little crafting time, just like you would expect inside of a nice Shire home. Yeah. And then I'm going to get my coffee. Got a very special mug here. This is one that I actually got to glaze and fire myself through Fun Place. And it just always reminds me of kind of like a nice cute cup that you might expect to drink by the fireside in a cozy hobbit hole. Another thing I have here is I've got a little dragon figurine as part of kind of some inspiration, since they defeated Smaug in the first Hobbit book. And then I picked this cute little sticker up from a new local yarn shop that opened up for me, and it's adorable. It's a little Frodo Baggins because, that way they don't have to violate copyright, but isn't that just the sweetest thing? So we're gonna keep that there for inspiration as well. And then another thing to add is that I'm using a special crochet hook. This one is a hand-turned wooden one, and I thought it kind of reminds me of a little magic wand. And what's more magical than, crocheting or knitting or stitching or whatever it is that you are doing today. And I've got my project here. So just to kind of show you some close-up details, we've got this little cable pattern here along the sleeve that I'm working. And then the rest of this is just going to be what's called herringbone double crochet. So I'll just be working kind of a nice meditative sleeve around here that's occasionally broken up by working this little cable. And then I did say I was going to show you some close-ups of the runes that are here. So these are along kind of like the bottom and the sides, and just, fun, beautiful runes that kind of add that little touch of that magical spirit of adventure like you would expect in any Hobbit or Lord of the Rings story. And with that, it's time to get started with our crafting. If you're curious about where I got this hook, you can actually check out the video that I'm linking in the top right corner here, where I do an unboxing of an entire set of these custom-made hooks. And then in that video, I also give information about how you could get a hold of your own. So if you're interested in having your own little magical set of beautiful wood-handled crochet hooks, you can feel free to check that out. They definitely make my crafting experience feel just a little extra special. And I think that it definitely fits in with the theme of today's episode. Because one of the things that is actually a prominent theme in the Lord of the Rings series and any of like the, the Hobbit stories or the Silmarillion or any of the other things is that crafting is a huge part of the magic in Middle-earth. So, you've got like the forging of the One Ring and the Rings of Power, got the making of the Doors of Durin, and like all the mithril used in things like armor and weapons. They go into a lot more detail about this in the books than they do like in kind of like the shows or the movies. And I do remember one of my favorite things to read about was when they were in the Forest of Lothlorien and they were gifted those cloaks. So you do see the cloaks in the movies, and they're very special cloaks that, if you wear them, they basically almost act like camouflage to help protect you from being seen. But in the book, it goes into detail about how these cloaks were woven by the fingers, or they were woven by the hands of Galadriel and her ladies. And so these were imbued with all this kind of magical elf power. And that just really stuck with me because anytime I crochet, I always get that sense of I'm imbuing my work with that same kind of mystical, magical power. And anytime I read about or watch on TV or movies or anything like that about when you craft things with your hands, you're using more than just your hands. You're also imparting it with your love and your soul and your energies. And a lot of times our intentions as we're working our crafts here get trapped within those stitches is very, very symbolic. And I can imagine you've probably experienced something similar when you've crafted, especially if you're making gifts for loved ones. You tend to think about the person you're making it for, how much you might love them or care for them, and how much you're hoping that they'll enjoy the gift that you're making. And to me, that is just very special, and that just always stuck with me. And that's one of the things that stuck with me all my life is the power of creating things as human beings and the kind of magic that we imbue in our daily work. And that's definitely a huge theme in The Lord of the Rings is that, crafting and pouring your own spirit into what you're making definitely impacts the outcome. So how the Dark Lord poured his cruelty and his malice into his One Ring and blah blah blah. It's okay, so if you put a bunch of negative intention into your crafting, then that's what you get out of it. But something like the hobbits who crafted their fine foods and their gardens and their idyllic landscape, or the elves who imbued their rings with their positive light and energy and protective powers. It's okay, so whatever your intention is, that is what goes into your craft. So I always try to make sure that as I'm working, I'm putting as much positive intention into my work as I can. And I think that definitely fits really well here, where I am using a tool that was crafted by an artisan in order to work with yarn that was hand dyed by a friend of mine on wool that was shorn and spun by somebody farming their sheep. And then I crafted this mug, and an artist created this sticker that was sold in a yarn shop run by an artist. So just all of these things connecting together, reminding us, or at least reminding me, how art in general and the act of creating can really bring together a community of individuals and just, bring lots of joy and happiness into our lives. Because without the work of all the people that created the yarn, the hook, my candle, the sticker, this metal figurine, my cup, my coffee, all of it, without all of that coming together, I wouldn't be able to do this with you today. And I think that's just such a beautiful thing. I also like to think that that fits with another theme. If you've read the books or watched any of the movies or shows, you know that the Shire is this beautiful, almost like perfect heavenly little spot. But the world surrounding it is not always perfect and beautiful. But it doesn't matter. They find their joy even amidst a world of chaos and darkness. So even when it sometimes feels like the world outside is, falling apart, or there's just darkness and evil everywhere, you're just like, there's so much wrong with this world. You can also remember that there's also a lot of light in it. There's beauty, there's love, there's community, family, friendship. It's not always perfect, but it's also not 100% pure darkness. We find the light where we can. We try to grasp onto it. We try to make it as bright as we can with our own individual light, just like what I hope to do here with you today. Or maybe you've had a hard day at work, or maybe you're having some struggles like in a relationship or something, but you've got these few moments to sit, enjoy yourself a cup of coffee or whatever beverage you might be enjoying, and just getting to craft with somebody else who's also just enjoying getting time to craft. Shutting out everything else that's going on in the world and just being, finding that simple pleasure. And the worst thing that can happen to me right now is what just happened there, where I accidentally snagged my yarn. Oh, that is so good. So one of the other main themes that I oftentimes get when I read The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings or watch any of the movies or the shows is that the hobbits tend to view life as kind of like a daily ritual of small pleasures. Yes, there are big, grand, epic adventures, but for the most part, that is not the norm. And I know that for me, that's not my norm. I do not go on these big adventures every single day. Every day, I tend to just do a lot of the same little stuff. And I think that that's one of the big things, is that we oftentimes look for grand adventures, but then we forget that the reason that those grand adventures happened, like in the movies and books, wasn't because of the adventure, but because they were protecting that small, daily, beautiful way of life that we oftentimes live in. And so each day, you don't have to do anything big. You just, you go to work, do your job. But then most of the time it's just spend time with family, do a hobby, watch some TV, eat some good food. And none of it's like, huge by any means, but all of those little moments, if anybody, if you've seen any kind of like interviews about people looking back on their life, they're like, all of those small things built up to a beautiful life well lived. You may not remember every single individual meal, but you'll remember the happiness that you felt when you shared meals with loved ones. So, a question I want to ask is, what are some things that you do on a daily basis that bring you that little bit of joy? Doesn't have to be big, but just like, anything that makes you look forward to your day. For me, it's not just this moment to be able to crochet. One of the things I always look forward to is my morning cup of coffee. That could be one that I make at home. It could be one that I make when I get to work at Starbucks. It could be one that I go and pick up and all that. But I think one of the things I always look forward to about it is that it's always a way to start my day off right. No matter what kind of day it's going to be, whether it's going to be hectic and busy, or if it's going to be a calm, relaxing day off. I don't think I've gone a day without some sort of coffee in the morning. Not even to wake me up necessarily, but just as like a sweet treat that I can always look forward to. I know that no matter what, I will always have that tasty little drink at the beginning of my day. And it's something that I look forward to every morning. So I'd love to know, what is kind of your daily cup of coffee? What is the thing that you pretty much can count on happening every day, no matter what, that like helps you just have something small and joyful to look forward to? If you feel like sharing, then feel free to drop down into the comments and answer the question with your daily act of happiness. Love being able to see those. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, I'm going to wrap up this round, and that's going to be kind of the end of this. If you enjoyed spending this little bit of time getting to craft and enjoy your coffee with me, it would be very helpful if you went ahead and gave this video a thumbs up to show YouTube that you liked it. And if you can, I'd also really love for you to subscribe to my channel so that you can be a part of these episodes moving forward. And if you hit that bell notification, it will alert you anytime I upload a new one of these. My goal is to try to have one of these every 2 weeks. I am not able to get a weekly episode in, but I at least want to try to get one every 2 weeks, just so that way it's fairly consistent, but you're also not waiting too terribly long in between each one. All right. With that, I really appreciate you joining me today, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.